And before that, my experience is from other emerging markets such as East Africa, but also Central Eastern Europe, and then also in sort of more developed markets. And I think what we have been seeing in Pakistan, really, when I sort of entered Pakistan 4 years ago, the change is unbelievable to what we are seeing today. And I think when you look on sort of the key pillars, from my perspective, that I was able to draw a parallel to other markets, it was sort of within those 3 legs. The one leg is that we are seeing a major population in terms of the young population. I believe it's about 130 million of a population that is below 30, which makes them or creates a massive opportunity for Pakistan. At the same time, what we are seeing in the past year, although COVID has a little bit slowed down, is the growth of a middle class, which also represents a massive opportunity for sort of the digital economy in Pakistan. So I think one of the key legs that we can't overlook is the demographics of Pakistan and the opportunity it represents. The second is that there is a lot of development when it comes to developing the digital infrastructure in Pakistan, and really discovers everything from e-governance. Like we have seen a major improvements, let's say in the Punjab region and also in other regions, but things like e-governance, but also really the incubation centers, infrastructure, the sort of ability of a regulator, which represents sort of, for me, the third leg, that is contributing to really building some foundational stones for this digital economy to span out, are critical. And it was really, I mean, positive to see people like State Bank or SECP, our regulators, to really making progress and consulting with the market on some of those. And I'm sure we'll talk more about it. We've seen some very concrete progress in the market right now. So I think the last bit that I want to touch upon is that I think Pakistan have seen also great boost when it comes to the talent and digital skills. People are coming, people who left Pakistan to study abroad, get their first experience, work within the digital economy abroad. They're coming back. They've had their first experience with companies like Kareem, Daraz, and we are seeing now the sort of a follow-up generation nearly that is spanning and building their own companies. They want to contribute back to Pakistan and create those opportunities. So I think it's very much the demographic, the fact that we are creating access, connectivity, the role of regulator, and certainly talent. So those are some of the key pillars that I wanted to reflect on.
Well, great. Thank you for that, Vladimir. I think the parallel that you've drawn from the other emerging markets and the different factors you've mentioned is very interesting because you have a very unique perspective. And I think I'll jump from you to Mr. Salman. So Mr. Salman, you have invested in so many businesses in Pakistan, but right now we're seeing this growth of foreign investors coming into technology. How do you see it? Why is it happening now? And how do you see the future?
Thank you so much, Rizwan, for inviting me to this panel. Actually, if you look at the Pakistan demographic compared to our neighbors in other territories, we are quite behind the digital expansion that we expect. Of course, the last years, we have seen more foreign investment in those particular areas than we have seen in all over other places of business. But if you look at the digital space, the whole world has gone crazy. Anything to do with tech, the share prices, any tech companies have just gone crazy. If you look at America, if you look at UK, everywhere. So even in Pakistan, if you look at the stock market, anything which has the word tech or technology has, the pricing has quite phenomenal. Sometimes when we sit down as a business and we look at the numbers and the multipliers from EPS to the kind of revenue they're doing, it just doesn't make sense. Coming back to the foreign direct investment, I strongly believe that what has happened is that the seed investors in these startups are mostly local firms.
Mm-hmm.
They have actually started incubating those small startups from the youngsters around Pakistan. And then they have professionally moved to the space of international investors to come and see um, what the market is. Um, uh, so we should give credit to the local investors initially who have actually put their money, put their faith into those young entrepreneurs. Like when I look at investment, I get almost 5 to 6 new startups come to me, digital startups who want to, want us to incubate them and to move them to the biggest space.
Right.
Even right now, 5 minutes ago, we were talking about 2 firms who have come to us and they want to move into this big foreign direct investment space.
Mm-hmm.
But like an example of the World Cup series, which we had just last month, if you look at the advertising space India had, there were mostly all startups advertising into that big space, into the mainstream space. Pakistan was way behind. Same old advertisers, same old F&B products. Not even a single startup could afford to basically invest into this high space of advertising and marketing. So we are behind, but of course the growth from last 20 years we have seen, especially in the new startups, is phenomenal. And we would, we as an investor would really congratulate the local investors who have actually taken this forward to the other markets.
Great perspective. I think you're right. There's a lot of external factors, but also the efforts of the local investors and entrepreneurs have really built that forward. And I think a third perspective that would be interesting is from Saudi Arabia, Mr. Asim Jamil. How does Pakistan look sitting there from Saudi Arabia? How does it compare to the GCC investment? And why do you think it's happening now in Pakistan?
Thank you very much, Rizwan, for inviting me. So I think there are multiple factors which are involved in this overall growth which we are seeing. And it's basically, I would say it's actually a full teamwork right now being worked all together at one time. So there is a realization at our end in Pakistan that yes, we are behind for a lot of reasons. And when we go into a little bit of a deep inside dive, so we see that there is a lot potential which is coming in, and that's not getting the right exposure to move out, and that's not being highlighted rightly. And comparatively, where we see the other parts of the world, there's a lot of promotion and a lot of marketing and a lot of upbuilding of these startups which are coming in. So on the other end, when we see the international side and where the foreign direct investment is coming, so we are seeing that yes, there is something which is like we are feeling over here sitting that now there is a groundwork which has started going on, and because of that groundwork, there is some trust level which has started building in, and all of us have always been sitting outside as a diaspora over here. Like we always have that feeling to come back to Pakistan and do the investments and do something for our land and our people back in. So we always want that one small call that would give us that confidence that yes, this is the time, and this is what the ease of doing business is getting better. And as our colleagues rightly have said, that the regulators have gotten involved. This is the first time ever where they have realized that yes, SECP has to do some changes. There are some other things where we have to do some changes for the new era which is coming, which is the startup, which is the tech world, and it's not going to work with the traditional side of business. And at the same time, COVID had been a bit of I would say, initiator in this overall process as well, where the industries, where the companies have realized that it's now or never. So it's that sort of a thing that if we miss this train right now, it's going to be a long way, then we'll be able to catch up, because the speed which we are seeing right now, or the talk which we are doing right now, is that it's very high investment which is coming in. In my opinion, this is a very low investment which has started. So this is just the beginning. And this investment is going to go multiple times, because now that momentum has really started coming in, and there are very few key players who have right now played their role, like Atif Awan, like, there are multiple other indicators in this who have really stepped out, and they have said that let's, do something, and let's get back, and let's unite, and let's invest into the Pakistani ecosystem and see how to. And when they started, they saw a huge potential, and they got to know, like, the universities, the institutes, everyone has started investing into this setup, into the incubation, into the startup promotion. So that has actually gotten on from all ends, from our local government at the ground side, the people who have believed in the first, like Salman said, who have invested and who have been the initial seed and angel investors, and at the other end, the people outside sitting, they have been gotten the exposure, and it has become a joint session which has moved to this level.
All right. So I think we've had really interesting, I would say, stream of perspectives coming in, drawing the parallel from the emerging markets, seeing how Pakistanis thinking who are earning money abroad are now thinking to come back and invest, and also Salman's perspective as an investor in Pakistan. Now, I think we can, I can draw a similar perspective through my Japanese partners. Because there has been so many investment coming in, they are, also now looking at Pakistan because of all the news that has come out. Now, moving from that to Mr. Asim Hussain, who represents Ignite, and Ignite is basically the name of that project that has been working really hard to spread incubators and also project the whole investment opportunity of technology around the world. So, Mr. Asim Hussain, why is it happening now? What's the future like?
Thank you, Rizwan, and all panelists. Well, this 2021 has been a remarkable year for Pakistani startups, and there has been a growth of more than 4 times in investments over last year. According to Ignite, we have reached around $330 million in investment in Pakistani startups this year. So there are a number of factors which are driving this attention and investment in Pakistani startups. Well, we are the 5th most populous country, so we have a big consumer market, and we are fast growing economy in Asia after China and India. We will be the 3rd fastest growing economy by 2025. That's the projection. Like one panelist mentioned earlier, we have a fast growing middle class. We have a fast growing e-commerce market, which was around $4 billion last year, and projected to almost double this year. And then, of course, we have reached 100 million broadband subscribers, including 3G, 4G subscribers. We have an improved security situation. And then the regulators like State Bank and SECP, they have also come up with some good incentives for the startup ecosystem, allowing sweat equity, giving tax exemptions to startups, the STZA, Special Technology Zones Initiative. And then another factor is the crackdown happening in the Chinese market, where the Chinese government is cracking down on tech sector and companies, Alibaba, etc. And that is driving the foreign investors to start looking at other markets in South Asia and Middle East, including Pakistan and other countries. So, and also Pakistani startups have come up with some good ideas. And the hot sectors for this year have been e-commerce, fintech, transport, health tech, ed tech, retail tech. So the future looks good. And as far as Ignite is concerned, we have already established 5 incubators in Pakistan. We are launching 2 more in Faisalabad and Hyderabad by next year, followed by Multan and Sialkot in the 2nd year. And we're also planning some vertical specialized incubators in gaming and animation, in avionics and electronics, even in health tech in future, either next year or the year after. So the startup ecosystem is heating up in Pakistan. We have good creative minds. And in fact, when we were at GITEX, we had around 20 startups there. one of our startups, MyTM, it was a fintech startup. They won the Supernova Challenge in the creative economy category. That was for the first time in the history of GITEX Future Stars. It was launched in 2015. So for the first time in their 6-year history that a Pakistani startup won their Supernova Challenge. So things are looking good for Pakistani startups. They are innovating and getting attention of foreign investors. And now it's time for local investors to also start looking at Pakistani startups. We shouldn't be just relying on foreign investment. These startups provide better ROI than, of course, we know the stock market is going down, and other than real estate and other sectors, startups are a new viable option for investment for local investors also.
Thank you, Mr. Asim. Quite insightful in how the incubators and other initiatives have led to better visibility, and how you're taking startups abroad with you in Dubai as well. Now, right after this, an immediate thought that comes to my head is a lot of investments and a lot of articles you would read are declaring Pakistan as a place where things haven't happened. So the replication of projects or businesses or ventures that have been successful around the world, that is one of the reasons why money is coming in. Now, my question is that the only opportunity in Pakistan? And because I believe every market is kind of unique. So what are the other areas that the world might be missing on, right? Or is it true that Pakistan right now is like a greenfield area where you don't have a lot of barriers to entry or competition to repeat what has already been successful in another market? So I think I'll start with you again, Vladimira.
Sure.
What do you think of that?
I think this comes with the maturity of the market as well. I think we have seen similar sort of flow in other markets that for building that sort of safety security at the beginning, both founders as well as investors are investing into something that feels familiar. I mean, it's a natural human sort of, emotion, I guess, and behavior that when we sort of face ambiguity and something that is unknown, we are more risk averse. So I think this comes with the maturity of the market. The piece, however, that I would love to highlight here, because I think that's the really great opportunity for Pakistan, is that at the moment, a lot of the startups are targeting sort of the top of the pyramid. And when you look again on the demographics of the Pakistan and the startups and their target customers, there is a huge part of the Pakistani population that is excluded, that is left out. And at the same time, they represent, as I said before, a big opportunity for Pakistan. So from our perspective at Neem Exponential, if I just use that as maybe sort of a parallel, so we operate within the financial services sector. And if you look on financial services sector in Pakistan, you have about 134 million people underbanked. It's one of the highest ratios in the world. And even within that sector, there's on the consumer side, we have a huge opportunity about the micro SMEs. Micro SMEs in Pakistan are out of the formal market, and at the same time, they represent a backbone for Pakistani economy. So looking and building solutions that are targeting those people and businesses that have been left out of the system, and having that lens and looking at them not necessarily only as people that we can sort of abuse and build business models on, but actually looking at them as a profitable customers for our businesses. I think that's the next opportunity for Pakistan and for those businesses. And I believe this is where the power of investors comes in as well. If as investors, we're going to have that head and the lens and the request for founders to have that inclusive lens and look on the income, the impact you create as a business beyond the financial sort of metrics and beyond the financial profit, I think that's where the responsibility lies. So it's, I believe, again, it represents, at the moment, I believe it's a challenge that we are seeing in the market. But at the same time, it represents a great, massive opportunity if we start targeting those people who've been historically by system left out and really being more dependent on handouts and charity and not really targeted as feasible customers that can also drive a sort of economy of this country.
Oh, wow. So basically, you know, we can draw entrepreneurial power out of challenges that exist at the micro level, at the grassroots level, which is great. So this is exactly where I'll turn to Mr. Muhammad Adeel from the Foreign Affairs Office. So, Mr. Adeel, after hearing all the perspectives and just hearing about, you know, how there's also different opportunities within the challenges of Pakistan, how do you see it? And, you know, based on your interactions with other foreign offices, do you see an increase in interest in Pakistan? And what are some of the things you would say we have to be careful about in the future?
Thank you, Rizwan. Pleasure to be here. First of all, I'll just agree with what the panelists have already said. They've pretty good, layout on why Pakistan is promoting a lot of investment, especially in the startup space. So, in my engagements with other foreign offices as well as our diaspora abroad, I've seen a lot of interest in our startups. And one of the reasons is that, you know, the silo between the academia, industry, and the regulator that is reduced. That has really enabled a lot of, you know, and there's a lot of interdisciplinary or technological convergence. Agri-tech and agri-bio, you know, they are interfacing, ed-tech. So a lot of tech platforms, and they don't require, you know, large-scale land-based infrastructure to create. So the entrepreneurial opportunity that has, you know, increased for people, it's become more favorable. And there's also decentralization as well in the tech sector. So those are the trends that other countries are quite interested in. And our youth dividend, it's maturing because a lot of them, they've been studying abroad and also getting online education. They have participated a lot in the gig economy. So now they are at the stage of the innovation funnel where they're enablers. So that's a target of other countries, that how they can engage, you know, our innovation stakeholders. And then inclusivity in platforms has increased, you know, with the disruption in fintech platforms. It's easy for people to gain capital. So those are the criteria that, you know, people really look forward to in Pakistan. As far as risks are concerned, I think it's the risks that are associated with any technology commercialization, like the way we see how the semiconductor industry, the politicization of the debate around it, and how there's the talk about a tech decoupling. That will be a risk for any country, not just Pakistan. It's about who becomes the technology providers of the future. And also, like, how do we keep up with the pace of regulation? Like, the more we delve further in the domain of cyber, how do we create effective cybersecurity systems? So creating a good digital ecosystem, because whether we like it or not, we have embraced the metaverse. So now we need to be proactive in that. How will we commercialize it? How will we populate it? So those and countries that are going to be successful are the ones that really understand the opportunity, create tangible deliverables. And I would like to really acknowledge the role that, you know, players like Ignite, the National Science and Technology Park, Special Technology Zones, they are playing. Like, they're identifying stakeholders and bridging those silos. And I believe, like, their success will be the biggest de-risking factor. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Adeel. I think Adeel's statement that the distance or the gaps between entrepreneurs, academics, and professionals have started decreasing over the last few years. I've experienced that myself. And it's interesting to see that, you know, our regulators and governance stakeholders are kind of taking a supportive stance now. Now, Mr. Salman, if you're there, I would like to ask the next question to you. Is because you're now seeing companies coming to you, you're just making a comparison to India as well. So my question to you would be, is Pakistan the market where it is the right thing to replicate something that is successful outside, or there's also opportunity beyond that? And what would be your, how would you share your experience with other people watching who might be businessmen themselves about investing into Pakistan?
Rizwan, the most important thing that the government needs to do is facilitate investment. That's the most important thing. If you look at the infrastructure that we have for technology companies, for IT-based companies, is very, very less.
Yeah.
We don't have a proper fiber setup in our country initially. You know, if you look at the technology that we had launched 20 years ago, we are still in the most obsolete terms right now. Let's say for television channels.
Yep.
We have still not digitalized our cable system.
Mhm.
The has gone far, far ahead. DTH platforms have come. You have cables, even in India, Sri Lanka and Bangladesh, all been digitalized. When I launched my sports channel a month and a half ago, I saw this big, big, big vacuum that there was not a single HD sports channel in our country.
Oh, wow.
So I saw the opportunity and I just launched it and I just got a good feedback about it. So it's not like we don't have sports channels. It's not like we don't have HD technology. HD is now getting to a level where 4K has been launched around. So the infrastructure is very important. The problem with our governments is that they want to invest, or they want to be the investors in every spec of industry. You know, they want to do joint ventures. They are supposed to be facilitators. They're not supposed to be investors. The moment we set up a government IT park, the moment we set up a government, IT division, we bring in an IT specialist from government, that his job should only be to facilitate investors coming into Pakistan. That's one thing. The second thing is we don't have IT parks. The government, without being government, the local companies, the private sector has to get involved. We need to push and facilitate the private sectors to get involved in investing into IT. But before that, we need to have infrastructure. Then we need to give them facility. The problem is with investors, whenever I speak to an investor who wants to invest into Pakistan, the first thing he looks at is the political instability in our country, which is now seen, which is in a better situation than we had seen in the last 20 years. But look at the dollar right now. If I invest $10 million into Pakistan at a rate of 150, and then suddenly it takes a startup at least 3 to 5 years to evolve and start making money. By that time, the currency has been devalued almost 40-50%. So even if I'm making 10% a year in 5 years, I'm still there as foreign investor. What we have done is we are trying to push this country and this economy to be an export-based economy. We want to export cotton, we want to export fabrics, we want to export this. We don't want to export technology. We haven't worked on exporting technology at all. We are at $2 billion right now. And our neighboring countries are above that, far, far, far beyond that. So we have to convince the government that if you want foreign direct investment to come in, these are not loans. These are investment. This is growth opportunities for countries. If you get a huge amount of money coming into Pakistan, this will flourish the growth. Right now, we have seen a lot of government sectors talking about the growth has been phenomenal, but we haven't been able to control the growth because we don't have those investors coming in to Pakistan who are investing into the right projects. Technology, IT is the way forward. The world has flourished. Look at the currency, look at Bitcoins, look at electric cars. Everybody is far, 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 far ahead of what we are. So we need the government to push towards stabilizing the market so that we can have more foreign direct investment into Pakistan, but into the right sphere.
Thank you so much, Mr. Salman. This is what I love about platforms like these. You find these interesting aspects that maybe haven't come to the mind, and you can directly get an answer as well, because we have two government representatives here. I think I'll ask Mr. Asim to comment on Mr. Salman's perspective. Do you think the government is now planning to take a step back or step forward, or do you think it is going to be the same way? What is your opinion on that?
No, I think.
Hello, is it
Mr.
me
Asim
or
Hussain? Mr. Asim Hussain.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you. Actually, I have to leave for a meeting in 5 minutes, so I'll just comment on Salman Saab's statement that government wants to get a share in everything. That's not true. If you look at all of the 5 incubation centers which have been established by Ignite, these are 100% CapEx and OpEx is funded by Ignite. And there's not a single penny from the private sector. In India, there's a 50-50 public-private partnership where the private party puts half of the funds come from the private sector and half from the government side. And government is not taking any equity in any of the startups. All these NICs do is they select the right startups, they incubate them, mentor them, do their networking, connect them with local customers and investors, and they graduate, and then the next batch comes in. And Ignite has been covering their CapEx and OpEx for the last 5 years. And we want to go towards sustainability in the future, like the Indian model, where the government funds maybe up to 50% and the private sector puts in their 50%. And in the future, we're also planning an accelerator on this model, where like on the Y Combinator model, we'll establish a fund where 50% will be contributed by Ignite and 50% by a professional VC firm who will be given a target to select the top startups of Pakistan, whether from the NICs or not from the NICs, and accelerate their growth over 6 to 12 months. So the private sector also needs to step in and pitch in and make their contribution. For the IT parks, the government should not be involved in the construction of these IT parks. The government can give land to the private sector. Private sector can come in and do the construction on their own. They can build their own offices. So this is how we need to have public-private partnerships with investments coming from the private sector also, instead of government putting in everything through PSDP projects and other things. 100% of the funding is being done by the government, which becomes actually a burden on the public exchequer.
I see. Interesting perspective on that, Mr. Asim. So you're saying sometimes you were not involved in all of the stakes in technology. You are actually doing lesser stakes than our neighbors. And I think which is kind of true for at least the incubators. But now I would like to move to Mr. Asim Jamil, who's sitting in Saudi Arabia. And I think over there, the government has a lot of involvement in a lot of investment initiatives. And, you know, the government is also one of the leading investors in technology globally. Not directly, it might be through the personal wealth of the individuals involved in the government. So how do you see involvement of the government, and what do you think should be the role? Should they be part of investment and commercial side of investing, or just be facilitators?
Well, I think it has to be a mix of both, I would say, for multiple reasons. That, you know, this is just the starting point, and we are seeing that because of a little bit of support and the exposure which has been brought in, we are seeing this much investments which have started coming in. So if we really create that culture and structure at a ground level and ease of doing business and whatever the international standards are that we bring it on at a local level. So again, the main point is the facilitation point, that if only the facilitation side is done rightly, so I think the rest, the other parties can take care of. They are already willing. And over here, like I would say, like in Saudi, there's an organization called OCAL. So what they do is that, you know, the Saudi government actually invests 50% of the round, whichever the startup is getting the round of, and the remaining 50% is being invested by the private equity or the angel investors or whosoever. So, you know, that, so they're showing their interest, they're showing their push to the startup system, and they're supporting and promoting into multiple sectors. This is one part. The other thing is that if we, into our Pakistani ecosystem, if we see any sector which we touch, so it has a huge gap and a huge potential. So this means there are two meanings of this. One, that inside itself, if we are able to create that opportunity, we can expand it very fast. On the other end, internationally, where such startups have already been doing their business and they are given the access, they can multiply their numbers by just coming into the Pakistani ecosystem. So it's not only the one way of the traffic that, you know, Pakistani startups getting promoted, it's the other way around as well. Like Saudi startups going into Egypt or going into Jordan or going into that sector. Like when we talk about to them that, you know, we will get you the access to Pakistan, like, you know, Asim Hussain Saab mentioned the STZA role, which is coming in, and there are multiple other sectors which are coming in. So if we give them that access, I am guaranteeing you that, you know, looking into the population and looking into the massive growth over here, anyone who has a good startup over here in Saudi, he would be very much willing to tap in over there for multiple reasons, that he can, you know, do the business at a minimum cost with and much bigger numbers what he is delivering over here in Saudi. And on top of that, like once he taps another market, the growth becomes very faster, and he can attract a bigger investor on that perspective as well.
Thank you. I think that's a very unique and different perspective, because different parts of the world, the governments are kind of playing a different role. And I think we can, you know, maybe look out for benchmarks that have worked well for emerging markets. So Mr. Adeel, you are also, you know, of course, looking at it from the government side. Do you think the role of the government needs to kind of amend or change a little bit, or is it fine the way they're going? Or how do you, what's your opinion on what comments Mr. Salman, Mr. Asim, and Mr. Asim Jamil made?
I think it's a lot dependent on the socio-economic condition of the country. As I said earlier, that if you look at the innovation supply chain, it's the academia, industry, and the regulator. Government does have a role where it comes to the regulation. And when we're looking at the expansion of, you know, new and emerging tech and how they can deliver socio-economic development, the role of the government is important. A lot of the success of the startups in Pakistan, it's important that they remain sustainable. And for becoming sustainable, they need to be given the necessary policy support so that you have indigenization of technology rather than, you know, startups. The boom that we are seeing eventually, you know, results into capital flight. For that, you need active engagement from the government stakeholders. On the other side of things is that the government, by virtue of its nexus and its engagement, for example, at the Foreign Office to the embassies and the consulates, they're very well aware on what's happening internationally. So their role from what's happening internationally and how situation can be changed or ameliorated at the national level, that's important. So you can't exclude that role. The level of intervention that should remain towards an enabling platform. So we'll have to look at how, you know, for example, if you look at how cryptos are going to be regulated, these are important questions, especially if you, at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I look at the science diplomacy division. So from the science diplomacy perspective, what I've been seeing internationally is that there's a lot of debate and discussion on cyber, on artificial intelligence, on quantum and cryptos. And that's where, unless and until governments across the world, you know, make a level-headed approach, the gains of these technology, they will not be equitable and sustainable. So the role of government will remain important, and it's, you know, but it has to look at the supply chain of the industry, academia, and the regulator at the end of the day.
So, Mr. Adeel, please add on to that. Should the government be involved as a commercial stakeholder in these projects, or not?
So I won't pass a value judgment on it. It depends on situation to situation and industry to industry. It should provide an enabling environment. Because and there's a lot of discussion between economists and policymakers across the world whether government is a commercial stakeholder or not. At the end of the day, the government is like not supposed to innovate things. It's supposed to provide an enabling policy environment. But if you look at like recent texts from authors like Marian Mazzucato in a recent book, Mission Economy, she talks about like, you know, government is an active innovation stakeholder. So it would depend on industry to industry. For example, if you look at our agri base, that's where some interventions from the government will be important. But in other areas such as IT, as Asim Saab has said, in the case of Ignite, you just need to, you know, provide an enabling environment and let the private sector come in.
Okay, all right, thank you for that. So after this, I'm going to bring it back to you, Vladimira, because Salman made a very interesting, he shared a very interesting point of view and perception, which I guess a lot of people would also agree with. And at the same time, we heard from the government side and hearing from Asim Jamil in Saudi Arabia. Now, you as a foreign investor or someone talking to foreign investors, I'm going to ask you a very direct question. Do you think the government is playing the right facilitation role in Pakistan? And are there any areas do you think they might be involved way too much?
I think what we've been seeing in the past, so I'm going to give a reflection of the past 4 years that I've been sort of actively involved in the ecosystem. Frankly, compared to the other markets where we've been operating, I would be highly positive about the public sector and how government has played a role. Particularly, I'm going to highlight the regulators. I think when, as an sort of foreign investor, one of the first things that you look at.
Sorry, Vladimira, can you just mention the name of the markets that you've already worked in, so we can draw on?
Sure.
Thank you.
So we've been part of the emerging market in Kenya when it was sort of becoming a hub, really sort of a hot space, and particularly around building a financial services ecosystem over there. Then it was actually in London. I was working with the premier financial services investment fund, Antimis Group, that was actually very closely collaborating with the UK government in building the very first financial services sandbox, for that matter. And I wanted to use it as an example because in here, what we've been saying, back to your question, is that the role of regulators and the sort of the openness and the fact that they brought on consultation, the open consultations to the public sector or the private sector to come in and provide some inputs. I think there is certainly, what we've seen is also that there is a space for being more transparent and maybe equitable in terms of what parties are taking part of those consultations. But I think already that, for instance, on building a digital banking regulation that is supposed to come out live next year, very important part in that play the private sector, stakeholders. So I think from the provision and from the lookout of the external investor, looking on the fact that Pakistan have such active and quite open-minded regulator is very attractive. It certainly gives you more safety and security. Because if you look on innovation, the regulator is one of the key elements that can really hinder innovation in a country. And again, we've seen this in, if I go back to Africa, so Kenya has been used as a big example, for instance, with players like mobile money, M-Pesa, right? So they allow them sort of to really scale across the country. And then there was the similar attempt in other African markets, but the regulators played a very different role. They really sort of pushed back and didn't allow the mobile money innovation to happen across the countries. So again, I think I would really sort of call out on the role of the regulator in Pakistan that is playing, hopefully more to come. Maybe one last sort of point that I wanted to make, and I don't want to be overly positive here, but I think it warrants a mention because seeing it in different countries is the regulator is coming up with a digital onboarding regulation, KYC. Mm-hmm. It's a massive enabler for financial inclusion in a country. The fact that a lot of our consumers will be able to open a bank account digitally on their phone, they don't have to go into a sort of a branch of a bank, that today has been one of the sort of major hindrances as well, will be a massive shift for the country. Again, it's coming from the side and from the position of a public sector and a regulator. So are there areas where the government, could play a more active role? I think, the whole sort of space around incubation and accelerators, I would love to sort of give a credit to the fact that we are becoming more decentralized when it comes to the innovation hubs. And I think the fact that we are opening up NICs in areas of the country like Faisalabad is really something that should be put attention to or should be celebrated. Because again, that was looking back in other ecosystems, most of the innovation happens around sort of centralized hubs. And what it creates is that big part of the society is not given the similar or same equal opportunity. So I think that's another example where the government played a sort of a credible role. I think I'll probably leave it at that, sometimes I feel like we do focus a lot on the challenges. And I believe that, the opportunity is to build on the good practice and work with the people who are really sort of pioneering a positive change for the country.
Yeah. So I think, it is like you said, there are challenges, but I think what I would appreciate about what's happening in Pakistan right now, we're having discussions like these where we have stakeholders from different parts, and we're talking about an issue. Of course, talking about something leads to a solution, or, leads to maybe enhancement of point of views. So now that we're coming towards the end, I would ask everyone for a few comments, closing comments on what they would like to leave the audience with about the future of Pakistan in investments, and whether you have something to share about what could be improved or whatever that is. So I'll start with Mr. Salman. Could you please, what would be your ending thoughts for today's session and the topic?
Rizwan, we had a very good chat, and I would just leave one thought to all the investors and all the incubators and all the young entrepreneurs of Pakistan, that Pakistan is one of the most aggressive market right now that we have left around the neighbors. And there are great opportunities. There are great opportunities in investing, and there are great opportunities in receiving investments. And this has just started, as Asim and Vladimira said. It has just started. This is going to flourish in the next 2 or 3 more years. The market is. We don't need to replicate. We don't need to start something new. If we just replicate what the world is doing and incorporate it in a better way in Pakistan, believe me, the market is going to have so many initiatives and so many investment portfolios that that the world will actually look at Pakistan very differently. Yeah. And Pakistan is a great market. I have lived all my life in Dubai, but I invest a lot in Pakistan, and every time I see, compared to other markets in the world, Pakistan has far greater opportunities than the neighboring countries. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Salman. Thank you for being part of this. Can I move on to Mr. Muhammad Adeel, if you can share your closing thoughts? You're mute. Sorry, we can't hear you.
Yeah. Can you hear me now? Yeah, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah. First of all, thank you to you for a very intelligent conversation. I thought you did a wonderful job at creating this entire discussion. It was very productive. So my closing remarks are pretty much derived from what I've said earlier. That what other people have been saying, that is just the start. So it's important that we keep on reducing the silos, because that's what has been hindering innovation across the world. That there were silos that are now being reduced because of digital disruption, and there's going to be further disruption. And it's also important to very frequently have intelligent conversations on the regulatory frameworks as well, because if we go towards over regulation, we are going to capitulate the industry. So we need to find a middle way, and also preempt, kind of future proof what's happening with new and emerging technologies, so that we are in a position where we're able to create sustainable linkages. And this is going to take time. So right now this is a boom, and there will be instant benefits, but it's going to taper off. What's after that? That's the time for institutionalization. So I believe that right now the environment is very encouraging, but the encouragement is contingent on the other steps that government, private, and related stakeholders can take. So that's my 2 words of it, and thank you very much to the organizers.
Thank you so much, Mr. Adeel. That was a very a very interesting perspective on that, and very helpful closing remarks. So, Mr. Asim, I'll move to you next. What would you say as closing remarks?
Yeah. First of all, again, thank you very much, Rizwan, for organizing this. And it's a very encouraging and interesting sort of such events which we are having. So my message to in this particular setup would be for the investors. Number one, that this is the time, and like now or never. So let's do it right now, and let's all of us give our best shot. And it's not only the money side, it's also the strategic side. So we would want the experience and the strategies and whatever international exposures we have. We need to come back, and we need to pay back to the Pakistani community, and to make them up to the mark, instead of they reinventing the wheel or doing some mistakes. We as experts sitting outside should be guiding them. So not the money side, the both strategic investment side. On the other end, I would like to give a message to the startup founders and the people who are on the other side, who are taking the investments and who are coming up with the new ideas. So that their role is very important, because it's very important to be consistent in this now and create multiple success stories. That is going to create a momentum much bigger than what it is right now. The moment any of us, which we have created the momentum right now, any of us doesn't play their role right, whether it be a regulator or it be a startup founder or anyone, this thing is going to hit us back again. So this is very important from the other side as well, that we need to religiously make sure that whatever talent we are bringing in and whatever investments we are bringing in, that needs to be rightly a success story to be developed and built up, and we play a role to support and promote them further.
Thank you so much, Asim. Moving on to you, Vladimira, what would be your closing remarks for today?
Thank you for the conversation, and it was a pleasure to meet everybody. I think I would probably share a call out to the Pakistani wider ecosystem, is that Pakistan has a brilliant opportunity to really be pioneering on a global scale. I think the story doesn't have to go that we look only to other markets to learn from, but I think there's an opportunity for the wider world to learn from the lesson that is happening right now in Pakistan. And I think the opportunity for both investors, government, and the entrepreneurs themselves is also to build businesses that are really purposeful, that are thinking about what they're building and impact they're creating, because we are sort of living in a globalized world. We're facing some major socioeconomic and environmental challenges. So I would say, if you're out there building a business or you're investing into a business, think twice or three times that you're supporting a solution that is really creating a wider value for this Mother Earth and society and wider than Pakistan. Let's not exclude, a big part of the society by creating only economic value. I think if we have this opportunity to lead by example, by a few plays at least in Pakistan, I think that will be tremendous value for the globe. So it's a global play. Think globally and always about the impact you're creating.
Yep. Thank you very much, Vladimira. You're right. We have to think globally or even universally, And I would like to add to the ending comments is it's interesting that, we are moving towards positive change. So what I would like to sort of end today's conversation is on that every one of us, the audience, the people involved, the organizers, I think as long as we go back and do better than what we have been doing today, we do better tomorrow, collectively we'll bring a positive change. We might have differences in opinions, and there's no problem that cannot be solved. So problems are, infinite, and so are solutions. So as long as we do our best to come up with solutions, we are going to get not just more investments, not just more economic value, but also value holistically. And yes, Pakistan should consider itself as a global contributor of value beyond just its own horizon. And that would be my finishing comments. Thank you everyone for being part of this. Thank you CXO Global Forum for arranging this and have giving me the task of moderating. Thank you, Iqbal, so much. And hopefully we have more conversations like this. I think we did discuss very interesting ideas and concepts. And hopefully, I would love to have this on paper and be shared with all the people that can read about it. So thank you so much, everyone. And over to you, whoever is here from CXO Forum.
Thank you, Rizwan.
Thank you for your valuable time.